The topic for today is Jesus. And I thought I would divide this into two parts. So there'll be a second video which will discuss part two. The first part will talk about who Jesus is not. And the second part will then consider who Jesus is. I'd like to start by referring to a passage that comes near the end of the section, bringing fantasy to truth, the first section, chapter 17 in the text. And that's what Jesus says, that one cannot understand truth from the perspective of fantasy. And I think we could substitute the word Jesus for truth and say that one cannot understand Jesus from the perspective of fantasy or illusion. And in our context today, the fantasy or the illusion is that the body is real, the world is real, and that what seems to go on in the world of time and space is true. And it is impossible to understand the phenomenon of Jesus from the perspective of looking at him through the lens of the body and the seeming reality of the world. Indeed, that's what the gospel writers did. When they came to write about this phenomenal appearance of this person that the world is called Jesus, they could do so only from looking at him through their own lens, which is the lens not only of the seeming reality of the body, but the lens of their specialness, their belief that sin is real, that sin required atonement, and therefore this resplendent being of light, which is I think how we could characterize the nature of Jesus, was then seen through a very shadowy lens, which clearly would distort who he was and certainly what his message was, so that we could look at Jesus and say that anything that is talked about from the point of view of history, which is also part of the illusion, since the Course teaches us that linear time is unreal, and so there is no past. Anything that talks about Jesus, for example, the Jesus of A Course in Miracles, through the lens of history, through the lens of what certain writers wrote about him over 2,000 years ago, that should not be taken as true at all. There's a meditation in lesson 189 in which Jesus is asking us to look at God, look at the world. We extrapolate and say look at him without all the concepts that we have believed, that we're asked to come to him with an empty mind, with empty arms. In fact, at the end of that passage it says, forget this world, forget this course, and come with empty arms unto your God. Well, we should also forget this world and forget this course and come with empty arms unto Jesus, and not try to see him or understand him through the eyes of the past, whether it's our personal past in terms of how we have been taught about Jesus, whether we've been brought up Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, or atheist, let alone through the past of 2,100 years, but to try to approach him freshly. If we do not do that, then our perceptions of him and any kind of theologies or Christologies that we adopt to try to explain him will be very severely distorted by our understanding of sin, making sin real, believing in the reality of the body, believing in the reality of specialness, that there are certain special people who are especially to be especially distinguished from everyone else. And we will lose sight of who Jesus is, which again will be the subject of the next video. So in summary, we could say that since we cannot understand Jesus from the perspective of illusion, that we should not even try, that we should rather seek to know him from inside of ourselves, which means, following the basic dynamic of the Course's teaching, that we bring illusions to the truth, that we should first look at all the illusions we have about Jesus, again, both from within our personal life as well as the life of society, Western civilization. Look at those, bring those to the truth of the present, who Jesus is for us right now. This would help undo all these distortions and then free us to truly know Jesus for who he is.